Here we got a Splitfire 2265, and today we're going to go ahead and do a how to install a log lifter on this machine. Now this here has got an electric motor. It doesn't make a difference if it's got a gas or electric for the log lifter install. So let's go ahead and take a look at the tools, some of the parts, and let's get started. All right, so as far as tools goes, this job is pretty simple and it won't take very long. You need a 1-inch wrench, a 7/8 wrench, 11/16, and a 9/16 wrench. I also use a 7/16 socket on a small 6-inch extension. You don't need the extension, but it makes it a little easier. And a 4mm or 3/16 Allen key. And as far as the items and the parts you'll get 2 new high pressure lines. This is the diverter valve for the hydraulic cylinder, the 3 pins, the pin mounts for the log lifter on the side of the shelf, your hydraulic cylinder, and that's it. So go ahead, unpack your items out of the box when you get it from Splitfire, lay it all out nicely, and grab your tools. I also use a small pail for my hydraulic fluid, because as I take the old lines off, it is going to leak a little bit, and because we do run these up at the shop. So have a small pail and some shop rags around just to go ahead and keep that machine nice and clean when you do spill some hydraulic fluid. So we're going to go ahead and start on the valve side first. So I'm going to grab my 7/8 wrench because that's the first tool I'll need. So we're going to get these lines removed, as we will not be using these lines anymore. The kit comes with 2 new lines. I got some rags here. So first thing we're going to do is I'm going to take a small rag, push it in the back of the machine here, right around the cylinder, just so no fluid goes back into the frame. And from here, I can crack these fittings loose, just like that. There we go. Okay, those are loose. Then come up here to the tops, do the same thing. We'll loosen those up, and then these can be removed altogether. Now, be careful, these are going to leak fluid, so take your rag, nicely have it ready around the lines. That way, when it does leak, you'll be able to keep it from getting all over the machine and all on your pretty nice floor. Yeah, so you can see the fluid is coming out of the line, which is fine. And I'm going to just pull this handle back to drop the fluid out of those fittings. Okay, we'll kind of just keep it up like that. I can put my wrench down. That's why I pre-loosen these, because now I can just take my finger and I should just be able to very carefully loosen that. Put this in the pail and do the same with the other one. That one can go in the pail as well. Now we'll grab that 7/8 wrench again, and we'll go ahead and we'll remove these 2 fittings, as these 2 fittings will also not be needed. So that's why we'll run this handle back and forth so it drops the fluid down, and then from there we can just simply take these here, turn these out. And what you can do is note, these are supposed to get torqued to 35 foot-pounds. We're not going to use a torque wrench today because not everybody has a torque wrench. So when you're loosening these, get a really good gauge on how tight they are, because that's how tight you're going to want to put the new ones back in. Okay, so these here will no longer be needed. And in its place, you're going to grab the open-ended ones. So instead of having a JIC, it's just a double NPT fitting. And you're going to want to put the taped side of the fitting into the valve. Just like that. So the raw side is going to be out. And from there, you can take your 7/8 wrench again, and you can go ahead and tighten this. Now, if you have a torque wrench, you could use a torque wrench. This would go to 35 foot-pounds. If you do not have a torque wrench, you can also do it this way too. Put the closed end of your wrench on it, and in your head, at a foot away from the fitting, you want to put about 35 pounds of pressure. So, there I'm maybe about 25, and that's pretty good and snug. That feels like probably 35, 40 pounds of pressure. And then the additional item I'm looking for is, as I tighten these to my 35 foot-pounds, I want to get them with the same tightness. I'm going to come across and I'm going to look to make sure they're level. So I can put my wrench on it, kind of as an indicator, and right now it shows that this one is a little bit higher, so I want to equalize them. So I might go past a little bit past 35, but I want to get these pretty close to the same height, and that there's looking very close. And I'm happy with that. Right there. That's good. So these fittings are good. This rag here can be removed, clean up any oil with it, and we're ready to put our valve back on it. We'll need our valve, and this very simply goes right on top. As you tighten it, tighten both fittings at the same time. That way it goes down in a parallel motion. You don't want to tighten the one all the way up and then tighten the other one, because you're going to jar it back and forth. And there you go. So that's mounted, it's snug of course. And the same thing, we're going to go ahead and grab our 1-inch wrench. Take that 1-inch wrench and we're going to tighten these. So that one's snug. I'll snug this one so it feels about the same. Then I'll come back to this one and we're going to tighten it up. And you'll see on most split fire machines, we try to tighten things so that the flats line up, just because it keeps it pretty and you know it's tight for future use. So that feels pretty good. And this one here, I can go right there as well. So that's nice and tight, you can see, not moving around. And this here is activating nice and smoothly. These should be pre-tightened by split fire, but if you notice that they're a little bit loose, you can give them one more turn and they sit on kind of a downward angle like this. So there you go. That valve is now in place, ready to go. We'll put down our 1-inch wrench and we'll go ahead and grab our lines. So these lines here are going to have tape on it, so just proceed to take the tape off. We keep the tape on usually to keep the dust out of them, and I'm going to pull all this tape off for a second. All right, so the tape is off. You can see we have our nice clean end fittings, and so you're going to want to grab the long one first. So you can see there's a short one and a long one. The long one's going to be the one you want first, and you can take the long one, screw it on the bottom fitting first. So you're just going to screw it on there just lightly, you know, nothing too crazy, and then take it over and it should line up into that fitting just like that. Now you might need to play with it a bit to make it work, and there we go. Our long line is on snug. Grab the short one. The same thing, the short one goes on the bottom first, and then up here we'll loosen this a little bit to give ourselves some slack. Perfect. Now we'll grab our 7/8 wrench and we can go ahead and tighten these up again. Get it nice and tight, and we're going to go just till we line up the next flats. That way it looks very pretty. And you don't want to go too tight on these, just really good and snug, and then that way these flats line up. That's perfect. Don't need to go killer tight on these things. There we go. So new lines are attached. I'll put away my 7/8 wrench, and we're going to take a rag and we're going to go do a little bit of cleanup here. This one's got a bit of oil on it, so I can pick a dry spot here, go through, and this down here is going to be wet, of course, because it was dripping for a little while. This rag is going to be pretty saturated, so we'll just pull it out, let it hang on the pail so it can drain to the pail, and then from here we can clean things up a little bit. And there we go. The messy part of the job is done. We're going to move on to the log lifter plate side of things. First thing you can do is grab this cylinder. You can see the hoses will be already attached and tightened. Don't let these ends go in the gravel, and keep that nice and clean. Now, this pin has to come out, and sometimes these cotter pin style attachments can be really tight. So what I like to do is take my hand like this. In certain cases, easier, pull it out like that. That way you're not trying to stick your finger in there and wreck your finger trying to get that cotter pin out. We'll walk around here, and then this can attach onto the machine over here. So pull that 1-inch pin out, go underneath the machine, line that connection up, just like that, keeping the hoses away from the ground. Push that pin back in, and there you go. That cylinder ready to go. From there, take the hose. Now, the top hose goes all the way to the far fitting, and the bottom hose goes to the closer fitting. That way the lengths work nicely. I'm just gonna snug those up. Now you'll see how this hose is kind of rubbing here. We're going to probably tilt this fitting up a little bit just to give it some more clearance. But for now, we'll keep it snug, and we'll focus on the rest of the log lifter plate before we make modifications to this over here. Next item will be these 2 brackets. So you can grab these, grab the 8 button head bolts that go with it, and grab your Allen key for those lovely little 8 bolts. Now these are directional, of course. You can see they're shaped that way, but these are both pin holders are tapped from both sides, so it doesn't matter which one goes on what hole pattern. We'll put that there. Simply take it like that. And I usually start these by hand because, I could use an impact, but the risk of something cross-threading or going south is high if I'm in a rush. So take your time, get them nicely lined up, start them by hand at least a turn or 2. That way you're not going to have any troubles with a misaligned thread or something like that. And then once you get them started, you can just take this and just turn these in there. Another 2 turns, just like that. So from the bottom, you'll see that the threads are almost poking through the bracket. Now do not tighten them more than this. Leave them so they can move around. It'll make the attachment of the log lifter plate much easier if these have a little bit of play in it. And we'll keep our wrench up here, or a tool, because we're going to need that right shortly again. So from here, we'll go ahead, grab our small pins. These are a 3/4 inch pin, and we can set one right here. We can set one right here. And from there, we're going to grab our log lifter plate. Now, if you have a second person, get a second person's help. I'll do it myself. It's very doable with one person too, but it can be a little tricky. And I like to grab it. I'll put it on my foot so I can move my foot back and forth, and then I'll just grab it very carefully. I can move my foot around, and that's why we left them loose, so that it can move around a little bit if we need to. From there, I'll switch to one hand and put your thumb on here. That way you can kind of make moving it easy. Put my pin in there, kind of move my foot forward a little bit more. And from there, we can get that pin to line up. All right, that's the one pin in place. That's the second pin in place. So now we can take it off my foot. We can just set it on the ground for now. Now we'll move over here, grab our 1-inch pin, the large pin, and this is going to go in the bottom of the cylinder, and we're going to very carefully lift the machine up. That way it sits like this. I'll put my leg underneath the stand so I can't fall down. And from there, I can push the pin in place without having to be on my knees too much. And turn this pin so this hole lines up with the thread. And this one's a little tight, so you might need to tap it a bit just to get it in position. There we go. Again, to move it, shake that around, get that thread to line up, just like that. And now we can go ahead and get our bolt and put our 1/4-inch bolt in there to secure this pin. Grab a bolt and a lock washer and our 1/4-inch extension. And from there, put it in there, get it just started. And there we go, that pin is fastened. Then we can drop the machine back down again. We just noticed in all our wiggling and shaking, this pin is kind of came out a little bit, so we'll kind of put that back in. We'll turn it back around. Okay, then we'll go back, grab 2 more bolts and 2 more lock washers. That lock washer on there just like that. 1 bolt will go through this small hole into the thread, just like that. And then the other one will come from this side here in the same way. Give it a little shake just to move it so the pin rotates. And this is why I use an extension on it, because I can nicely get some access to tighten it up nice and quickly. There we go. We're going to pull out our Allen key again, and now we can go ahead and tighten those brackets. And these here need to go good and tight. Nothing crazy again. You don't want to strip the head of the Allen key trying to get them tight, so they just need to go good, and then double check them for a second just to make sure that as you tighten all of them, none of them loosen up. Good. There we go. So now we'll grab our 9/16 and the 11/16 wrench. We'll come over here and we're going to tighten these 2 hoses. Now you'll see that this one here is a little bit too close to that pump. So we're going to take the 9/16 on there. We're just going to turn it up a little bit. Same with this one here. We're just going to modify it a little bit up, and then we can go like this here. And we can churn this hose. See how we can churn that hose back and forth? We want it laying down nicely, and from there we'll tighten up the swivel, hold the hose nice and stationary. Good and snug, nothing tight there. Otherwise you will wreck the threads by going too tight. And the same thing here. We're going to grab it, keep it away from that pump a little bit, hold the hose stationary, and again, tighten that swivel so it's nice and snug. Just a really good and snug, nothing too killer. And there we go. It's not heavy contact against it there, and that's good. So from here, we're done with the wrenches. Before we proceed to start the machine up, we'll check the hydraulic oil because we lost some out of the back of the machine while we had the lines off. So we'll check our fluid. And in this case, if it was a Honda, we would start it up. We're going to plug it in for a second, and we'll check the function. And we can also, when the table's in the up position, we're going to put a pump of grease in each hinge up here to make sure she runs nice and smooth. So on the 2265s, go ahead, grab your rag, we got a dipstick here, go ahead, and we know it's going to be low already. We probably know it's not even going to be on the dipstick because we did lose quite a bit. We can see, I'm not sure if you can see, it actually is on the high position right there already. but the reason it might be is because it might not be on level ground. So we're going to go ahead and move it to some level ground, which I'm just going to push it forward a little bit. There we go. That'll help out a bit. I'll check it again. And we may have only lost half a cup, which would be hardly noticeable on the actual reservoir. So sometimes it's hard to tell exactly how much oil you've lost. But again, turn it in nice and slow so it gets just snug. Perfect. And then from there, check it again. Yeah, it's right at the high section still. So we probably lost maybe half a cup, less than I thought, but it wasn't trickling as fast. So it's perfect. We're good to go. That can get tightened back up. So let's go ahead. We'll plug it in and I'll come back with a grease gun and we'll test the function on it and we should be good to go. All right, let's plug this puppy in. Just like that. Got a grease gun here when it's in the up position. And when we start it, we're going to look for any leaks. Double check our fittings or lines. We're going to push it in the upright position. That's going to be directing the fluid into the main cylinder. From there, we can start it up. It sounds good. Sounds like it's pulling a lot of fluid. There's no surging kind of noise coming out of there. So it's a nice, strong sound out of that pump, which is good. We know it's got good oil. And from there, we're just going to very slowly come this way and check our lines for any leaks. Looks good. And we're checking for leaks around these fittings here, these up here, and also these two down here, of course, too. I don't see any leaks, so it looks pretty good. Let it build some full pressure. Okay, so we're just checking for leaks in this lifter. We're just going really slowly, nothing crazy, all the way up. Looks good, it's nice and level. Don't see any leaks here. Check down here. Nice and dry as well. We'll lift it back up. And just notice I'm going very light in this handle. I'm not going all the way, I'm just taking it really easy on it. Okay. I'm going to turn it off. Grab our grease gun. I'm going to lift the machine up like this. And we can see one pump there. One pump right there. That's done. And so when we're done this now, we'll check the oil one more time because this cylinder is going to take fluid to fill that cylinder. So if you do need fluid, it's AW32, a very generic fluid found at any hardware store. And if you had a liter, you would do more than what that cylinder needs. So from here, we'll start it back up again and we'll put it back down. So you can see I'm going very slow in this handle. Now watch what happens when I go full speed in the handle. It wants to kill that motor out, yeah? And that's not what we want. So that means we've got to change one more setting on the machine. And it might vary from machine to machine and from pump to pump. Some pumps shift gears easily and some do not. So you can hear this here, that motor's really struggling. But on the down cycle, it does it no problem. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to remove this cap down here and we're going to change the setting for the gear change so that it gives this electric motor a little bit of an easier time. So the pressure is going to remain the same at 3000 psi. For the splitting section, we're just going to change this setting here to change gear a little bit quicker in its cycle for a two-stage pump. Okay, so to change the setting on the pump, remember, we're not changing any kind of pressure setting, we're just changing the gear change. So you need a 3/4 inch wrench and a flat screwdriver. So before we change it, you'll hear that As we go up, going down was fine, but going up, it wants to kill that motor, which is not what we want. So we just popped the breaker right there, so we'll have to go back inside and redo the breaker. But first, all you have to do is take your 3/4 inch wrench, come here, get it on there, break that fitting, and this is just a cap. So you can loosen this cap here. Once the cap is removed, take this and go half a turn out. So we're going to take it here, and we're going to go half a turn to the same position. That's all we got to do. From there, take the cap, turn it back on. Be careful. There is a small washer up there, so make sure that little washer stays up in there. It doesn't fall off into a crack in the floor or something like that. Turn it on. Take our wrench. Tighten it up again so it doesn't leak. Perfect. And from there, we'll start it up again. And now the operation will be much better. You can see the pump shifts right away, and it works nice and smooth. Beautiful. And when we switch it to the log splitting side of things, we get full function, and it still hits our 3,000 PSI on the valve here. So there you go. She's ready to roll. So there you have the how to install a log lifter on a Splitfire 2265. You know, you don't need any special tools to get this done. It's very simple. If you're very mechanically inclined, you could probably get it done in a half hour, 45 minutes. And if you're not so much, it might take you an hour and a half, something like that. And you can do it in your garage or on a gravel laneway like this. It's really basic stuff. And you know, this log lifter will be great as a work table, and also it'll lift up to 250 pounds, those bigger logs, and it'll save your back at the end of the day. So it's a great option to add to your machine. You know, if you have any questions, give us a call at the office or see more at our YouTube channel.